What truly keeps a man bound to a woman, not just in body but in soul, is not found in a bedroom technique or a fleeting thrill. It's something far deeper. An invisible thread woven through trust, responsiveness, emotional safety, and shared vulnerability. Most people talk about what men want, but few ever dare to understand what makes a man stay. When we speak about emotional security through physical intimacy, we're touching on something that runs far deeper than what popular culture tends to recognize. Most people assume that the male experience of intimacy is driven primarily by physical desire, a kind of biological itch that needs to be scratched. And while there is truth to the biological imperative, it is a mistake, perhaps even a dangerous one, to assume that men do not long for emotional anchoring in the same space where physical connection occurs. In fact, for many men, the bedroom is one of the very few places where they feel truly permitted to express vulnerability, to let their guard down, and to experience closeness without the burdens of societal performance. When a woman creates an emotionally safe space during intimacy, where a man is not mocked for his emotional expression or shamed for his desires, but rather embraced in his totality, flaws and all, something profound happens within him. From a psychological standpoint, the male psyche is built on layers of performance, responsibility, and restraint. From a young age, boys are taught to suppress emotions, to be strong, to not show weakness. As they grow into men, the demand for stoicism and external control only intensifies. But the problem is, humans, men included, are not machines. We are emotional beings who long for acceptance, for affirmation, and for a place where we can be seen, not for our utility, but for our essence. Physical intimacy in its deepest form becomes one of the few areas where a man feels he is allowed to simply be. Not perform, not fix, not conquer, just be. And when a woman uses this space, not just for pleasure, but for connection, she offers him a sanctuary from the demands of the world. In this sanctuary, it is not enough to perform acts mechanically. Emotional safety in bed comes from the way she looks at him, the softness in her voice, the way she receives him. Not just with her body, but with her spirit. When she touches him with presence, with warmth, with a kind of quiet knowing that he is not just a body, but a soul seeking to be met, he feels it. He may not always articulate it, but he feels it. And that feeling etches itself into his psyche. It tells him that here, in this space, he is enough. He does not need to prove himself. He does not need to outdo anyone. He is worthy not because he's winning or producing, but because he's human and loved. This kind of emotional security is rare, and men do not easily walk away from it once they've tasted it, because the truth is, many men carry emotional wounds they've never spoken of, fears of inadequacy, fears of abandonment, fears of not being good enough. If intimacy becomes the one space where those fears are quieted, even for a moment, it creates a bond that is not easily broken. A woman who can make a man feel emotionally safe while physically close offers him something far more lasting than temporary satisfaction. She gives him a deep psychological imprint of home, a place where he can retreat, recover, and return stronger. This is what anchors a man beyond attraction, beyond novelty. It touches his very core. Admiration and affirmation are not shallow forms of flattery. They are the psychological nutrients that sustain a man's self-worth, especially in the realm of intimacy. When a woman offers sincere admiration to a man in bed, whether through her words, her body language, or her expressions, she is not just boosting his ego. She is acknowledging his presence, his masculinity, his effort, and his capacity to make her feel desired and fulfilled. This type of affirmation speaks to one of the deepest male needs, to feel that he matters, that he is enough, and that he is valued not just in society, but in the eyes of the woman he shares his most vulnerable moments with. A man may receive praise in his professional life. He may be admired for his skills, his intelligence, his ability to provide or lead. But that type of admiration often exists in a transactional framework. It is tied to performance and outcome. In the bedroom, however, a man is not leading a project or solving a problem. He is showing up as a raw, emotional being, exposed and unguarded. The way a woman responds to him in this moment sends signals that reach far beyond the physical act. If she shows enthusiasm for his touch, if she verbalizes her attraction to his body, if she makes it known that she finds him irresistible, she is doing far more than being seductive. She is validating his entire sense of masculine identity in a way that no external success can replicate. This kind of admiration is not about being submissive or performative. It is about being attuned. It is about recognizing that men, despite the appearance of confidence and control, often harbor insecurities, especially when it comes to being desired. Many men go through life not knowing whether they are truly wanted or simply tolerated. In bed, where masks come off, those doubts can resurface. But when a woman makes it clear through her words and actions that she genuinely wants him, not out of obligation, but from authentic desire, it provides a deep, almost primal reassurance. It says you are wanted for who you are. What's often misunderstood is that this kind of affirmation is not about stroking narcissism. It's about connecting to the very root of masculine psychology, which is wired to seek approval through action and impact. If a man feels that his presence makes a woman feel beautiful, safe, aroused, and alive, he draws immense meaning from that. It becomes part of how he defines his success, not just as a lover, but as a man. That emotional association between admiration and identity becomes a powerful bond. He doesn't just remember how she looked at him, he remembers how she saw him. And if she saw him as powerful, sexy, valuable, he will return to her again and again, not just for the pleasure, but for the affirmation that fuels his emotional and sexual being. When admiration is mutual and consistent, it fosters a cycle of positive reinforcement. The more appreciated a man feels, the more he wants to show up for his partner, not just physically, but emotionally. He becomes more attentive, more invested, and more motivated to satisfy her needs because her appreciation is not taken for granted. It is received as a gift. And in a world where men are often expected to be unfeeling providers or stoic protectors, receiving genuine admiration from a woman in moments of intimacy offers a rare kind of emotional freedom. It allows him to step into a space where he is not being used, judged, or measured, but seen, affirmed, and wanted. That is not something a man forgets. Responsiveness in intimacy is often overlooked, yet it is one of the most powerful forms of connection a woman can offer a man. The common cultural narrative tends to overemphasize technique, positions, duration, performance. But these are external markers. They are tools, not the substance. What truly grips a man's psyche and keeps him emotionally invested is not how well his partner performs, but how present and responsive she is during the experience. When a woman is truly in the moment, when her reactions are sincere, when her body and facial expressions reflect authentic pleasure and emotional openness, she is doing more than just participating. She is validating the entire experience. She is telling him without words that this moment is real, meaningful, and mutually fulfilling. Men are surprisingly attuned to authenticity during sex. They may not be able to explain it in psychological terms, but they feel it. A woman who simply goes through the motions or who appears emotionally disconnected creates an atmosphere of performance. That performance, while possibly exciting in the short term, lacks depth. It communicates a lack of vulnerability, a lack of real desire. Over time, this erodes emotional intimacy. The man may begin to feel as though his partner is not truly there with him, but rather performing a role to satisfy expectation. This emotional disconnection can lead to a deep sense of loneliness, even in the middle of a physically intimate act. On the other hand, when a woman is responsive, when she moans with genuine pleasure, moves with natural rhythm, looks into his eyes with open emotion, it signals a form of presence that cannot be faked. This responsiveness tells the man that he is having an impact, that he is creating joy, that his presence is not only accepted but desired. This feeds directly into the core of masculine psychology, which is driven not merely by release, but by the desire to create an experience that matters. Men want to feel that they can make a woman feel something real, something deep, something unforgettable. Responsiveness is proof that they are doing so. This responsiveness also builds a kind of feedback loop. The more responsive a woman is, the more confident and emotionally engaged the man becomes, and the more emotionally engaged he is, the more he desires to give, to please, to connect. This creates a mutually reinforcing cycle of emotional and sexual depth that strengthens the bond between them. He doesn't walk away from these moments thinking only of the physical pleasure. He walks away with a memory of how alive and validated he felt. It is also important to understand that responsiveness does not require a performance of exaggerated theatrics. It requires authenticity. A woman who breathes deeply, who shows vulnerability, who whispers what she's feeling, or simply holds him with genuine emotion is already doing more than any rehearsed act could accomplish. Men crave that rawness. They're moments that feel unscripted, unfiltered, and human. These are the moments they replay in their minds when they're alone. These are the memories they return to when evaluating whether a connection is real or replaceable. When a woman shows that she is affected by him, not pretending, but truly moved, he internalizes that as a form of success that no external affirmation can replace. And it's in those moments that intimacy becomes less about sex and more about connection. The man doesn't just feel wanted, he feels significant. That's the kind of feeling that doesn't fade quickly. It lingers, it bonds, and it becomes the reason he returns, not just to her body, but to the emotional world she allows him to enter. Shared surrender and trust during intimacy create a level of bonding that transcends the physical act and roots itself deeply in the emotional and psychological terrain of a relationship. For many men, trust is not something that is given freely. It is earned slowly, often guarded behind layers of conditioning that discourage emotional exposure. Men are taught to control, to dominate, to lead, but very rarely are they given the emotional permission to let go, to feel safe, or to express vulnerability. Intimacy becomes one of the few arenas where this permission can be granted. When a woman demonstrates a deep embodied trust during sex, when she allows herself to be open, receptive, and emotionally available, it signals something profound. That she sees him not as a threat, not as someone to fear or resist, but as someone worthy of her surrender. This kind of surrender is not about submission in the traditional sense. It is about letting go of self-protection, letting down emotional walls, and allowing the experience to unfold without fear or control. When a woman offers this trust in bed, it tells the man that he is safe to lead, not because she's weak, but because she trusts his strength, his presence, and his intention. That trust empowers him to step into a role that is deeply embedded in the masculine psyche, the role of protector, provider, and lover, not in a transactional or patriarchal sense, but in a deeply human and emotional one. He doesn't just feel like he is having sex, he feels like he is being invited into something sacred. On the other hand, if a woman holds back emotionally during intimacy, if she appears guarded, overly self-conscious, or disconnected, this often reflects a lack of safety or unresolved relational tension. Men sense this. Even if everything appears smooth on the surface, emotional distance is picked up like static in a radio signal. It disrupts the flow. The moment becomes less about union and more about two people performing beside each other. But when there is shared surrender, when both partners are fully present, fully feeling, fully open, the experience becomes transformative. It no longer serves as mere pleasure. It becomes renewal, a return to wholeness. This is where emotional trust plays a central role. When a man feels that a woman trusts him in her most vulnerable state, physically and emotionally, it activates a core masculine instinct to protect and cherish. That trust is interpreted as a deep vote of confidence in his character, his capability, and his presence. It tells him, even without words, you are safe to be yourself here. And that kind of message cuts through years of conditioning that told him he had to be hard, distant, or emotionally shut down to be accepted. The more a woman is able to express emotional openness during sex, through eye contact, through vocal honesty, through the softening of her body, the more the man is drawn not only to her body, but to her being. He is not just pursuing orgasm. He is pursuing a reconnection with something primal and human, the feeling of being trusted. And because trust is such a rare commodity in the world of modern relationships, when he finds it, he values it with the weight it deserves. He may have experienced passion elsewhere, but trust makes him feel anchored. Trust makes him feel essential. It gives him something to protect, something to honor, something to return to. That kind of emotional contract, forged in the fires of intimacy, becomes a lasting bond, one that is rarely, if ever, broken. Encouraging a man's leadership in the bedroom while simultaneously offering mutual playfulness creates a dynamic that satisfies both emotional and psychological needs embedded in human intimacy. Many men are wired to crave a sense of direction and purpose in their relationships, and nowhere is this drive more visible than during sexual connection. This doesn't stem from a need to control or dominate, but from a deeper masculine instinct to lead with strength, clarity, and intent. When a woman allows her partner to lead in intimacy, not by submission, but by choice, she activates this core masculine desire. She is saying, in essence, I trust you to take me somewhere meaningful. And that trust gives his actions weight, depth, and significance. He begins to feel like the initiator, not just of pleasure, but of experience, of transformation, of closeness. But the magic doesn't end there. If leadership were the only factor, intimacy could become one-sided, mechanical, or even emotionally distant. What elevates it from performance to true connection is mutual playfulness. When the woman not only receives, but engages, initiates, teases, and responds with spontaneity and joy. This balanced exchange of energy turns the experience into something alive and evolving. When she playfully pushes back, when she flirts mid-act, when she pulls him in and then breaks into laughter or whispers something unexpected, it breaks any lingering tension and introduces emotional lightness. Playfulness disarms the rigid expectations that often accompany sex and replaces them with presence and joy. It gives permission to be human, to explore, to be imperfect, and fully involved. This balance between encouraging leadership and expressing playfulness allows both partners to thrive within their natural emotional frameworks. For the man, he feels needed, capable, and masculine in the most grounded sense. He isn't just performing, he is leading with emotional purpose. And for the woman, playfulness becomes her way of maintaining autonomy and creativity without having to step outside of trust. She's not just following, she's dancing alongside him, keeping the emotional current flowing, ensuring that the experience doesn't plateau into routine. This interplay builds not only sexual chemistry, but emotional compatibility. It becomes a language that only the two of them speak, a private rhythm that can't be replicated outside that connection. What also happens in this space is a dissolving of gender stereotypes. A woman's playfulness can include taking the lead momentarily, initiating acts, expressing desires boldly, so long as it is done with a spirit of mutuality rather than control. This gives the man room to breathe and reassures him that leadership doesn't mean carrying all responsibility. It reminds him that this is not a battlefield of dominance, but a sanctuary of mutual enjoyment. When he sees that she can both trust him and challenge him, that she can surrender and still spark creativity, he realizes he's with someone who understands the complexity of desire. In the long term, this dynamic prevents the erosion of excitement that can plague long-term relationships. It keeps things fresh, not through artificial variety, but through a living, breathing connection that evolves with time. When a man consistently experiences a woman who encourages his leadership while inviting him into a playful exchange, he feels not only aroused, but emotionally fed. He feels like he is part of something sacred and rare, a partnership where passion and emotional intelligence coexist. This is not a woman he merely desires. This is a woman he cherishes, protects, and returns to. Emotional aftercare and presence following intimacy is one of the most underrated yet deeply bonding elements in any romantic relationship. It's often assumed that the climax of physical intimacy is the end of the experience, when in truth, the moments that follow are just as, if not more important, in building psychological connection and emotional loyalty. What happens after sex isn't just a cool down. It's a mirror of how safe, valued, and emotionally understood a man feels in the presence of his partner. A woman who knows how to navigate those moments with warmth, attentiveness, and emotional attunement creates an environment that speaks directly to the deepest, most hidden needs of a man, needs he may not even articulate. In the aftermath of physical release, a man is often in a heightened state of openness. The hormonal and psychological shifts, dopamine, prolactin, oxytocin, all create a temporary window where his emotional guard is lowered. In that space, he is more receptive to emotional cues, more sensitive to connection or detachment, and more attuned to the energy being exchanged. A woman who understands this doesn't rush to distance herself physically or emotionally. Instead, she stays. She touches his face, lays her head on his chest, speaks softly, or remains silently present. This seemingly simple act carries an emotional message. I'm not here just for the act. I'm here for you. This feeling is immensely powerful for a man. In a world that often expects him to be stoic, to suppress feelings, to move on quickly and keep performing, this type of aftercare tells him he doesn't have to carry that armor in her presence. It gives him emotional permission to relax, to exhale, to exist without expectation. It allows him to associate intimacy not just with pleasure, but with peace. And when a man consistently finds peace in the arms of a woman, he doesn't wander. He anchors himself there, because that kind of emotional grounding is irreplaceable. Emotional aftercare also serves as a space where unspoken affirmations are exchanged. The softness of her hand, the tone of her voice, the attentiveness in her gaze, all tell him that he is not disposable, that his presence matters, that he is more than just a body or a performance. That kind of emotional reassurance doesn't just boost his ego, it nurtures his heart. It makes him want to give more, open up more, and show up more fully in the relationship. He begins to equate intimacy with not just sexual fulfillment, but with emotional belonging. It is also in these moments that deeper conversations often unfold, not always with words, but with emotion. A man may reveal something small, something raw, something unscripted, and if the woman listens, not to respond, but to understand, she becomes the one person he feels safe being emotionally naked with. That safety becomes a sanctuary in his mind. He might forget grand romantic gestures, but he will not forget the emotional space she held for him when he was vulnerable. He will not forget the silence that wasn't empty but comforting. He will not forget the way she looked at him when no one else was watching. Over time, these small, intimate rituals of emotional aftercare create a bond that is resilient and rare. They stitch together the emotional fabric of the relationship with threads of trust, empathy, and emotional intelligence. And in the male psyche, where validation is often external and fleeting, finding a woman who offers that kind of depth is like discovering something sacred. She becomes not just a lover, but a home. And a man doesn't walk away from home. Not when he knows it's the only place where his heart, his mind, and his masculinity are truly seen, held, and respected. What holds a man to a woman isn't just desire. It's the emotional experience that desire is wrapped in. It's the trust she offers in her surrender, the authenticity she brings through her reactions, the emotional safety she provides in aftercare, and the way she makes him feel not just like a man, but like a valued man. When a woman embraces her sensuality, not as a performance, but as an act of emotional truth and presence, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she played a role well, but because she invited him into something real. And in a world full of surface connections, a man will always stay where he feels the rare weight of something genuine. That is the kind of woman he doesn't just desire, he reveres her, protects her, and never forgets her.